So hello everyone and welcome back to Studify Success. We are back with the second part of metals and non-metals. We have already covered physical properties of metals and non-metals in the first part, and we are going to do chemical properties of metals and non-metals in the second part. The notes of this PPT are available in the description section, and for more study content you can always visit our website studifysuccess.com. So let's get started. So now we will study some chemical properties of metals and non-metals. Now we know the physical aspects of metals and non-metals. We will study some chemical aspects of metals and non-metals. Starting with metals. So what are chemical properties? Chemical properties are the properties which involve something about the chemical nature of that substance. So how that substance reacts with other substances chemically, what happens in that substance, is there a change which is noticeable there? So that is what chemical substances is. So we'll see the chemical properties of metals. So for this we have various chemical reactions of metals with various other things. So the first reaction which we have is the reaction of metals with oxygen. Also we say it as burning. So this needs to be made very clear that whenever we are talking about burning, whenever we say burning, so burning is not possible without oxygen. So whenever we say that a paper is burning, this means that chemically the paper is reacting with oxygen which is present in air. So burning in air, or whenever we say that metals are being burnt in air, it means that metals are reacting with oxygen. So burning means oxygen is being referred. So this has to be made very clear. So reaction of metals with oxygen or burning of metals. So what happens? This is very important. Metal with oxygen forms metal oxides. So whenever a metal reacts with oxygen, it forms a metallic oxide. For example, we have copper which reacts with O2 or oxygen and it forms copper oxide, which is blackish in color. We have aluminium which reacts with oxygen and gives us aluminium oxide. We have magnesium which reacts with oxygen and gives us magnesium oxide. You must have seen this picture of burning of magnesium ribbon earlier as well. So whenever a magnesium ribbon is burnt in air, it produces the ash which is produced is of magnesium oxide, and it produces white light. So it produces a very dazzling bright white light is produced whenever magnesium is burnt. Or even when any other metal is burnt in air, or when metals react with oxygen, they produce a characteristic flame. So you can see potassium here is producing a lilac flame. We have sodium here which is producing a yellowish flame. Lithium, when it is being burnt in air, it is producing a reddish flame. Calcium is producing a orangish flame. Copper is producing a greenish flame. So we have various types of flames, various colors of flames which are imparted when any metal reacts with oxygen. Okay, so this is that metal reacts with oxygen to produce metallic oxides. Metallic oxides are mostly basic. So metallic oxides, when for example, if I am burning this magnesium ribbon, I take the ash which is produced over here in the petri dish, the ash which is produced, and I check the acidity and basicity for it. I take a litmus paper and I check that if this is acidic or basic. I take a red litmus paper and I see that this red litmus paper is changed to blue by the magnesium oxide which was produced here. So this indicates that metal oxides are basic in nature. Okay, metal oxides are basic in nature. But some metal oxides, for example, we have aluminium oxide, zinc oxide, they show both acidic as well as basic character. So whenever we reacted with a red litmus paper, they will change it to blue, and when we take a blue litmus paper, they will change it to red as well. So they will show both acidic as well as basic characters. Such oxides which show both acidic as well as basic characters are called amphoteric metallic oxides. Amphoteric oxides. So what are amphoteric oxides? Which are both acidic as well as basic. We call them amphoteric oxides. But generally metal oxides are basic, but oxides like aluminium oxide and zinc oxide are amphoteric in nature, which means they are both acidic as well as basic. So we can check it by this. You can see this is aluminium oxide. We react it with HCl, we get aluminium chloride, which is a salt. So whenever any acidic substance and a basic substance react, it produces salt. This is neutralization reaction. We know that it produces salt and produces water. So it acts as both acid and base. You can see here aluminium oxide when reacts with acid, it acts as a base and forms salt. Aluminium oxide when reacts with sodium hydroxide, which is a base, then aluminium oxide acts like a acid. So here it is acting like an acid and here it is acting like a base, and in both cases it is producing respective bases and respective salts and water. So these are amphoteric oxides. Most of the metallic oxides are insoluble in water. They cannot be dissolved in water, but some form alkalis. Alkalis are the solution of a base in water. A base in water, that solution is called an alkali solution. So sodium oxide and this we have potassium oxide. When they are mixed in water, they produce sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, which are alkalis. So overall, whenever a metal reacts with oxygen, it produces metallic oxide. Here are a few examples. These metallic oxides are basic in nature. These metallic oxides are basic in nature, but some of them are amphoteric. Amphoteric means some of them are both basic, show both basic as well as acidic characters, and they form alkalis. So these are the three keywords which we need to remember for the reaction of metal with oxygen. The next reaction which we have is the reactivity. So now we know that metals react with oxygen to produce metal oxide, but the rate of reaction, what do we mean by rate of reaction? So the speed with which any metal is reacting with oxygen is different for all metals. Some metals react very quickly and very vigorously, that is, they can be explosive. So some metals react very vigorously, very quickly, and the reaction is so fast that heat is produced on a large scale and it can cause fire. Whereas some metals react very slowly and we need to supply some heat to catalyze or increase the speed of the reaction. So that is reactivity, that how, with what speed, with what rate the metals react with oxygen. So we have metals like sodium and potassium. Sodium and potassium react very quickly and very vigorously with oxygen. So even if sodium is present normally, we are not burning it, but it reacts with the atmospheric oxygen and it can cause fire. So sodium and potassium reacts vigorously and they can catch fire if they are kept in open. Hence, to protect them and to protect such accidental fires, we keep sodium and potassium in kerosene. We keep them in kerosene. So here you can see this is sodium and it is kept in a jar of kerosene. Why not water? Because water is what? Water is H2O. It also has oxygen ion. So again sodium can react with oxygen. So we do not prefer water. We take kerosene, which is non-reactive to sodium and potassium, and we keep it in kerosene oil so that they do not react and they do not cause such accidental fires. On the other hand, see, sodium and potassium react vigorously, but on the other hand we have magnesium, aluminium, zinc and lead. They react very slowly with air or very slowly with oxygen, and they form with time they form a protective layer around them. So you know that whenever we do this burning of magnesium ribbon, we first clean this magnesium ribbon by sandpaper. Why do we do so? Because with time, when this magnesium ribbon is kept in air, it reacts with the oxygen in the air, and slowly with time it forms a layer of magnesium oxide on the ribbon. So we remove that layer of magnesium oxide to react or to heat the magnesium ribbon. We remove it with sandpaper. This magnesium oxide acts like a protective covering, because if once the whole ribbon is covered with magnesium oxide, it prevents further corrosion. No more magnesium can further be transformed to magnesium oxide once it is completely covered by magnesium oxide. So it acts like a protective layer to prevent corrosion. So this we already know that it burns with a white dazzling light. Silver, platinum and gold, they don't burn or react with air. So we have, you can see from reactivity is decreasing. So first we have very reactive metals, which is sodium and potassium. Then we have magnesium, aluminium, zinc and lead, which react slowly. Okay, but they do react, but they react slowly. Then we have silver, platinum and gold, which do not react with air. Okay, so they do not react or burn with air. So reactivity is decreasing. So these things are the things which we need to remember. Next we have is the reaction of metal with water. So we are done with reaction of metal with oxygen. Now we have that how a metal reacts with water. Water, I told you, water is H2O. So how does a metal react with water? So metals react with water and produce metal oxide and hydrogen gas. So here we can see we have this general equation that metal with water forms metal oxides and hydrogen gas is liberated. Okay, hydrogen gas is released or liberated. This metal oxide, when reacts further with water, it forms metal hydroxide, which is an alkali or a base, which we already studied earlier. So this is what we have already studied in the reaction of metal with oxygen as well. So we have various, this shows the reactivity. Some metals are so reactive that they react even with cold water. They don't need hot water as well. They react with cold water. Then some metals are not that reactive and they react with hot water. Some metals need more temperature and they react with steam. And some metals at last that do not react at all. So this again shows the reactivity of metals, which is decreasing from top to bottom, and reactivity of metals with water. So let us see. First we have reaction with cold water. So we know from the earlier slide that sodium and potassium, both of them are highly reactive metals. They react with oxygen vigorously and they react with water as well. So they react with water very violently. So even with cold water, it doesn't need hot water as well. Even with cold water, if they are exposed to cold water as well, they react very violently because these reactions. So let's see the reaction first. We have potassium and we have water. It forms potassium hydroxide like here. Then it forms hydrogen gas and it forms heat energy. Energy is being liberated. So earlier, okay, first of all potassium oxide is formed, then that oxide is further converted to hydroxide. So we have potassium hydroxide. So this potassium hydroxide, we have hydrogen gas and we have heat energy. So whenever heat energy is released, it means it is an exothermic reaction. So this reaction is highly exothermic because see, we have heat energy here due to this heat, this evolved oxygen, the oxygen which is being liberated, this catches fire. So this is why reaction of sodium and potassium is very violent, because huge amount of heat energy is liberated, and this heat energy, due to this heat energy, the hydrogen liberated catches fire. So this is why they react violently, and they are not kept in water, they are kept in kerosene to prevent contact with water and to prevent contact with oxygen as well. So sodium and potassium react violently with cold water because they are highly reactive. This we know that they are highly reactive. Another metal which is reactive and which can react to cold water is calcium. Calcium reacts with cold water and form calcium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. Although it does not react that violently like sodium and potassium, but it reacts with cold water and it gives us metal hydroxide, but it is not that violent. What happens is, whenever we keep calcium in cold water, we see that, for example, this is the calcium atom. This is the calcium atom. The hydrogen gas which is being liberated, the bubbles of this hydrogen gas stick with the calcium ion or the calcium metal. They stick with the calcium metal, and due to this, the calcium metal starts floating above on the surface of water. We can see calcium floating on the surface of water. So this can be one of the questions, that why does calcium float when reacted with water? Because the hydrogen gas liberated sticks to the calcium ion and it starts floating. Okay. Similar is the case with magnesium as well. When magnesium reacts with water, the hydrogen gas produced sticks to the magnesium ion and magnesium also starts floating. The only difference is calcium is more reactive than magnesium and it can react even with cold water, but magnesium does not react with cold water, it needs hot water for reacting. So this is the only difference. So now we know that potassium, sodium and calcium react with cold water, they are reactive. Magnesium is not that reactive, but it reacts with hot water. Calcium and magnesium, both of them floats when they react with water due to the hydrogen gas which is formed, and it sticks to their surface and makes them float. Next we have some other metals which are aluminium, zinc, iron, which react with steam. They do not react with cold water, they do not react with hot water, they need more temperature, so they react with steam to produce aluminium oxide and ferric oxide, and they produce hydrogen gas. And we have some metals like lead, copper, silver and gold which do not react with water. Here you can see lead and gold, and I think these metals were not even reacting with oxygen as well. So these are highly non-reactive metals, whereas you can see that sodium and potassium were vigorously reacting with oxygen as well and even with water. This indicates that sodium and potassium are highly reactive metals, and all these metals are comparatively not that reactive. They do react or they do not react, but under high conditions, under extreme conditions they react, otherwise they do not react with water and oxygen. So next we have with us is the reaction of metals and acids. Till now we have done two types of reactions, metals and oxygen, metals and water, and now we have metals reacting with acids. So any metal when reacts with a dilute acid, it forms a salt and hydrogen gas is liberated. For example, we have sodium. When sodium reacts with dilute HCl, it forms NaCl, which is the common salt, sodium chloride, and hydrogen gas. Hydrogen gas is not evolved when a metal reacts with nitric acid. Why? Okay, so here we had HCl. Even if I take any other metal, any other acid, it should have reacted the same way, but this is not the case with nitric acid. Why? Because nitric acid is a very strong oxidizing agent. What is an oxidizing agent? An oxidizing agent is the one which oxidizes something else. What is oxidation? Oxidation is addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. So it oxidizes the other metal and it itself gets reduced. So for example, here we have sodium HNO3, then it is reacting and producing a salt and hydrogen gas. So this was the expected reaction which we have, but the reaction we see is sodium reacted with nitric acid giving us salt, water, and we have nitrogen dioxide as well. So these two products were not expected. So what has happened here, let us see. So this nitric acid has oxidized this hydrogen. So this is only hydrogen. This nitric acid has oxidized this hydrogen. Oxidation means addition of oxygen. So it has oxidized it, means it has added an oxygen here. So due to which this hydrogen has changed to water. This hydrogen has been transferred, or it has been transformed into water, and this nitric acid has itself been reduced. Reduction means loss of hydrogen. You can see this hydrogen has been removed from this nitric acid. One oxygen has gone with hydrogen to make water, and this nitric acid is left with NO2, which is seen here. So this is what happens. The nitric acid acts as an oxidizing agent, and it reacts and oxidizes hydrogen gas to water, and it itself gets reduced. So after reduction, in some cases it forms nitrogen dioxide gas, or in other cases it forms only nitrogen oxide gas, which is NO. So this is the reaction of any metal with nitric acid. It does not form hydrogen gas, it forms water and oxides. Okay, apart from this, other metals form hydrogen gas. Only magnesium and manganese react with very dilute nitric acid to form hydrogen gas. Only magnesium and manganese can react with nitric acid to form hydrogen gas, but apart from them, the other metals react with nitric acid to form water and nitric dioxide. So how do we test for the presence of hydrogen? How do we know that if hydrogen is being liberated or water is being liberated? Gas evolves. So how do we know that which gas is being evolved? We bring a burning candle near the end. So you can see here we have zinc granules. These zinc granules are reacting with HCl. We have HCl in here. Okay, it is reacting with HCl, and we know that some gas is being produced. This gas is being passed from here, from this delivery tube to this soap water, and in this soap water we see that some gas is being evolved. When gases are evolved from soap water, it forms bubbles. So we see bubbles are forming. When I bring a burning candle near to the bubble, I see that the candle extinguishes with some crackling or popping sound. So it extinguishes. The burning candle is extinguished now by this gas. So this is a characteristic test which we do for hydrogen, where we bring a burning candle and it extinguishes with a popping sound. So popping sound when burning candle is brought near to the gas is seen, and it is used as a test for testing the presence of hydrogen gas. So this is the reaction of metals and acids. They react with dilute acids to produce salt, but nitric acid does not produce hydrogen gas, it produces water. Due to the oxidizing agent of nitric acid, only magnesium and manganese can react with very dilute nitric acid, not even concentrated, very dilute nitric acid to form water. So let us move ahead now. Next we have done three type of reactions. Now the next chemical reaction we have is the reaction of metals with other metals. So how does one metal react with other metal? You must probably know this. You have studied about displacement reactions in your chapter 1, chemical reactions and equations. So in that chapter we know that some metals are more reactive than other metals and they displace one metal from its salt solution. So what is happening? Let us see how is one metal reacting with another metal. So reactive metals can displace the less reactive metals from their compounds or from their salt solutions. For example, if I have a solution of some metal and the other metal is very reactive, so that reactive metal can displace means remove or exchange position, so that reactive metal comes in position of the non-reactive one and the non-reactive one comes out. You can see this here. So this metal A is highly reactive, this B is not that reactive. Okay, so we have this salt solution of B and we have metal A in the pure normal solid form. So when both of these react, the metal A comes in the salt solution of B and B comes in the metal A state. So salt solution of A is visible and metal E is removed out of the solution. So this is called displacement reaction. Why? Because the more reactive metal, which is A here, is displacing or removing the less reactive metal from its salt solution and it is coming to the salt solution. So there is an exchange of positions between the more reactive metal and the less reactive metal. So here we again have one activity. So in this activity we have two test tubes. So in both the test tubes we have taken, in one test tube we have an iron nail and in the other test tube we have a copper wire. In the copper wire solution we have kept So in order to understand the reaction between two metals, we have another activity which is here. So we have two test tubes. Let us label the test tubes as 1 and test tube 2. We will study about both the test tubes separately. So both the test tubes are covered by a cork and we have a thread which is hanging inside the test tube. We have tied iron nail on one test tube and we have a copper wire on the other test tube. Let us have a look at the first test tube. We have an iron nail which is hanging in the test tube and we have some solution which is bluish in color. This solution is copper sulfate solution. Okay, after some time we keep it for some time for the reaction between iron and copper. We keep it for some time and after some time we observe, when we take out the iron nail and we observe that there is some brownish coating on the iron nail. The iron nail was completely silver, but now it has some brownish coating on it, and we see that the solution which was bluish in color has now changed to light green in color. So when we check what these substances are, we see that we have a deposition of copper on the iron nail and in the solution we have iron ions. Earlier we had copper ions, that is why it was blue in color. Now we have iron ions. So copper sulfate has changed to iron sulfate and the iron nail now has copper coating on it. Okay. Similarly, on the other hand, we have the second test tube and we have the same reactants. We have copper and we have iron. Here also we had iron and we have copper. We expected the same reaction, but the reaction has changed. We see now we have a copper wire here and we have the solution as iron sulfate. We do not see any reaction between both of them. What is the only difference here is, here we had a salt solution of copper and here we have a salt solution of iron, but here we observe a completely different reaction and here no reaction is there. So what do we conclude from this? We conclude that this means that iron is a more reactive metal. It is so reactive that it can displace this copper from its salt solution. It can remove that copper from that salt solution, and it can make bond with the sulfate ions, and that copper then comes and it attaches to the iron on the iron nail. Okay, whereas here this copper was not that reactive, it could not displace iron from its solution. So this means that copper is less reactive than iron. So here iron is more reactive than copper, and it is able to displace means it is able to remove that copper from the solution, and it can come at its place. So it is copper is displaced from the solution, and in return iron comes in the solution and it becomes iron sulfate. The copper is accumulated on the iron nail and the solution becomes green in color from blue. Why does it become green in color? Due to the presence of iron sulfate, which has been developed from copper sulfate. So this is the reaction. We had iron which was reacting with copper sulfate, which was in aqueous state, and now we have ferrous sulfate or iron sulfate, and we have copper as the solid. Here we can see that this copper is reacting or is displacing this iron is displacing this copper from its salt solution, whereas this copper was not able to displace the iron from its salt solution. So this is what a displacement reaction is. A displacement reaction is when one metal displaces or removes or exchanges position with another metal in its salt solution. So only a more reactive metal can displace another less reactive metal. If I have a lesser reactive metal here, it cannot displace a more reactive metal from the salt solution. Okay, but only a more reactive metal can displace it from the salt solution. So this is what and how metals react with other metals. We have a reactivity series. So how do we know that if a metal is more reactive? For example, I give you sodium and potassium. I give you a salt of sodium and I give you potassium in solid state. How will you identify that if the displacement reaction will occur or if the displacement reaction will not occur? So after various experiments, after seeing that which metal is more reactive, not reactive, less reactive, a reactivity series was developed. A series was developed in which all the metals were arranged in a manner in which the first metal, which was potassium, was the most reactive one, and the reactivity was decreasing as we moved down, and gold was the least reactive metal. Okay, so this was a reactivity series which was developed. I have also shared a mnemonic here with the help of which you can remember this reactivity series, which is very important for all the displacement reactions. This is काशीनाथ का माली आलू ज़रा फीके से पकाता है क्योंकि होंगे आगे और. With the help of this you can remember the elements and the metals which are present in chronological order, and now you will be able to remember the reactivity series and you will be able to solve any reaction, that if the displacement reaction is possible or not. Sodium and potassium are one of the most reactive metals. That is why you saw that they reacted vigorously with oxygen, vigorously with water, and they reacted with acids as well. We know that silver and gold, they were not able to react with oxygen, they were not able to react with water as well, because they are one of the least reactive metals. Okay, here you saw that sodium, potassium and calcium reacted with cold water. Magnesium needed hot water. Aluminium, zinc, iron and lead, I think only till iron, these three could react with steam, and the others could not even react with water. So with the help of the reactivity series you can know the order in which metals react with various substances. So this is why the reactivity series is very important for us. So here we are with the end of this video as well. We have covered physical properties of metals and non-metals, chemical properties of metals and non-metals in the past two videos. If you have not seen those videos, please see them. You'll get to know more about metals and non-metals. In the next video, we will be doing ionic compounds and extraction and purification of metals, how it's done, and corrosions. The last three topics are left. Most majorly we are done with metals and non-metals. So thank you so much for being a part of this video, and stay tuned for part 3. For more content, please visit our website studyfiresuccess.com. Thank you so much.